Hello everyone, I'm Marty and welcome to my October 2025 market update for Vancouver. And what a beautiful city we live in. I just finished this morning a beautiful run through the University Endowment lands, then a swim in Jericho Beach. 13 degrees. It's a mean 13 degrees, but crystal clear. A couple of seals out there. Caught a couple crabs. Let them go, of course. We are so blessed to be here in Vancouver. And that's why everybody likes to live here in this great city. And that's why I do my market updates. So without further ado, let's jump into the stats and what's happening in Vancouver in real estate. It's a little bit more of the same, no dramatic changes from last month, but let's just pop into the stats on my monthly stats and see what's happened. Basically, prices have been pretty stable. If we look at detached houses year over year, we have seen an increase 7% from this time last year in terms of activity. Prices are down about 4.5%, and last month a marginal drop of just under 1%. Townhomes and duplexes in Greater Vancouver, activities down almost 6%. Prices are down just under 3%. And last month, a marginal drop just under 1%, virtually no change in price. And attached apartment condos, we've seen the activity increase modestly 1.5%. Prices down about 4.5% from this time last year, and 0.8% drop in pricing. So, not much is happening in price, no surprise there. And it's been fairly stable. And activity, it's starting to pick up a little bit. Our phone is ringing more. We are getting the listings that we're taking now. They are selling with good exposure, proper pricing, excellent marking. Things are moving because the buyers are starting to come back to the table. And we'll talk about why that is shortly. So, what's hot and what's not? Let's look at that market speedo. I'm sorry, no Walton Goggins today. We've got the actual market speedo on the screen. Total listings are up from the previous year. Total sales are up. Sale prices are down about 5% for Metro Vancouver from year over year. So our market speedo indicator is at about 11%. That's just inside that buyer's market territory. So no surprise there. Let's look at the individual product in the various areas here for Vancouver. If we're over 21% sales ratio or absorption rate in the market, of course, we're in a seller's market. None of the product and areas are there at the moment. If we're between 12 and 20%, we're in a balanced market. It's not really favoring the buyers or the sellers. Some product is there. And if we're under 11%, we're in what we call a buyer's dominated market. And there's a little bit of downward pressure as we're seeing on prices. So let's just pop into the various areas. Let's look at detached houses, Vancouver Westside. Here's what's happened since December of last year. We've been skirting around that buyer's market territory for most of the last few months. And no surprise, this past month has been at 7%. And that, of course, is in buyer's market territory. But I will point out, let's just jump into a couple of price bands here for detached houses. Let's look at 175 to 2 million. There were actually 5 sales detached on the west side. That's an 83% sales ratio. So don't tell me all the houses are quiet. The affordable ones certainly are very, very active. Not a lot under 2 million in the west side, but there were 5 that sold last month. That's kind of interesting. If we look at condos and townhomes on the west side, you can see those have been more active over the year. They've been in that balanced market territory. If we look at this last month, we're at 12%. So we are down from 18 the previous month, so 12% is still in balanced market territory. Good, healthy activity, a little bit less than the previous month, but still healthy. Now, if we pop to downtown, you can see we've been right at that upper edge of buyer's market territory at 11%. No surprise, we are still at 11% for the downtown area. If we go over to the east side on detached houses, let's look at that. You can see we've been in that upper end of the buyer's market territory. We had a busy July in East Vancouver, but last month, same at 10%. This month has dropped a little bit more at 9%, still in a buyer's market for Eastside detached. Let's look at Eastside attached condos and townhomes, probably our busiest product and busiest area over the last 6 months on the east side, upper end of balanced. This past month, we are still at 16%, a slight drop from the middle of summer where we were actually busier, but the same as last month, still in balanced market territory for attached product on the east side. If we look overall across BC, you can, let me just pop back to that. You can still see we're in balanced market territory throughout the province and right smack dab in the middle. So Greater Vancouver, Metro Vancouver is similar to the entire province. Let's see what's happening with prices. If we look at the average price graph since 1977, one of my favorite graphs. Here's where I started in real estate, right back here in 1992. Pretty standard year to year, not a lot of change. Then it got really exciting about 2002. But today, the average house price, we're on average about 10% below where we were in that peak still of spring of 2024. So if you're trying to get a rough idea, and I hate to refer to BC assessment, but again, a rough idea on your value today, take your 2024 assessment, not the one from this year, but last year, and drop it by about 5 to 10%, and you'll get a rough idea on where prices are for your type of home today. And we look at the 5-year trend, again, no surprise there for houses, and condos. We are at about 10% below the 5-year average. So what's happening in the burbs? If we're looking at detached houses, we have increased activity in West Vancouver, North Vancouver, Port Moody, New West, North Delta, Tsawwassen and Cloverdale. Everything else has had a slight drop or stayed the same. If we're looking at attached monthly variances on the sales ratio, same idea. On the North Shore, we're seeing some increase in activity. We just sold one there the other day. Downtown, we've seen a little bit of an increase. Interestingly enough, Burnaby and Surrey for attached. And also out in Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam area, we've seen some increase in activity. So it is spotty. It's price dependent. The lower the price of the product, the more activity that we're getting. That's no surprise. It's kind of like that pyramid. Average residential price across BC. There's that post-COVID peak, and here we are today, again, about a 10% drop from that average MLS price across the province. No different from Vancouver, Lower Mainland. This is long-term August average, the orange bars. The blue bars are August 2025. You can see in terms of unit sales, that's market activity, we are down in pretty well all areas. And that's no surprise if you've been watching my updates throughout the year. Our activity is down this year for all the reasons that I've talked about previously, including Thompson, Okanagan, Kootenay, and in northern BC. So let's talk about where prices are going. Let's talk a little bit about the forecast. What are the market drivers? Green is market enhancer, red is market or price deterrent, and in orange it is transitioning. The biggest market deterrent we're facing right now is consumer confidence. There's still many buyers who are uncertain about where our economy is going. There's political uncertainty emanating from, of course, the US. But inflation and the economy seem to be doing well. Inflation's now at 1.9%, still below that happiness band that Tiff Macklem has set for the Bank of Canada. Our economy is showing some signs of slowing, and I think that's maybe why the Bank of Canada is starting to drop those rates, which is actually helping the market. We'll get a little bit more into that shortly, talking about that cost of borrowing. So that variable rate is dropping with the Bank of Canada drops. And as the bond yields fall, we may also see some fixed rate drops, but it's pretty stable. No big drops in the fixed rates, but we are going to see some variable rate that many of the buyers will use for their next purchase coming soon. Inventory levels have been level over the past few months, and that's a good sign. The last thing we want to see is inventory to take off and that buyer demand gets spread over many more listings. That will cause immediate price drops, and that is holding. So these are all good. The consumer confidence, because of the uncertainty that the world is facing now, is of course impacting our local market. Okay, consumer confidence. There's the graphic of the undecided buyer. Unemployment rate is climbing. We're at 7.1% in Canada and at 6.2% in BC. And that's one of the things that everyone is watching to determine where we are going. If we're looking at the retail sales, people are still spending. There's nothing holding back people from buying that new car, that new TV, going on holidays. People are spending like never before. And that's probably good for many businesses, as long as they're not spending more than they're earning. But that's a whole other discussion. You're seeing that increase in retail sales is on its way up in BC. Now, the Canadian monthly GDP. I'm not an economist, but here's what they're saying. There was some growth in July, but it may be temporary because the growth may flatten, and the Bank of Canada is cutting once more to address the underlying weakness in the Canadian economy and labor market. So they're seeing things that many of us aren't seeing. They're deep diving into all of those stats and deciding, hey, let's drop those rates because we see some things happening with the economy we don't like. When that happens, again, remember those bond yields can drop when we get a weakening economy, and then the fixed rates can drop. So just because the economy is weakening does not necessarily mean that the real estate market's going to weaken. It can have a counter effect related to the rates. So they're focusing on employment and the inflation rate. So those are the data points that they're going to consider in their next couple of meetings, which we'll talk about shortly. Part of consumer confidence, I look at rental rates. So you can see this year we've had some drops in rental rates, slight increase from last month, 2.96 to 3.09. So the rental rates are holding fairly steady throughout Greater Vancouver. Commercial leading indicator in terms of commercial real estate has seen some increase in activity. So there's an improved environment for commercial real estate, and that's always a good sign because that's tied to many other factors that will influence our market as well. So inflation, there's my friend Tiff back east, and he's holding that real estate market in his hands. We're at 1.9% now, so that's good. That's compared to 1.7 last month. As long as we're between the 2 and 3% band, we're doing okay. So the overnight target rate dropped to 2.5% on September 17th. They made that announcement, and that dropped the rates by 25 basis points. Exciting. There was not a mad rush in the market, but that took a little bit of the pressure off of buyers that are thinking or are already in the market to bring those lending costs down. We're expecting potentially another drop in the next rate announcement just before Halloween on October 29th. And the door is open for more cuts. So this is good news for the real estate market. As the cheaper money is, the more people end up buying. And our next announcement after the October 29th, well, of course, the last one for the year will be December 10th. So it'll be interesting to see what our friend Tiff does on those next two announcements. Okay, if we're looking at the consumer price index or inflation in general, for all product, we are at 1.9%. That's a slight increase from 1.7 last month. There's that happiness band. We're actually right below it. So we got a little bit of cushioning here. That is good news. overall, that inflation is low. We're pretty well in sync with our neighbors. We're at 1.9% compared to 1.7% inflation. They're at 2.9% compared to 2.7% last month. Our overnight target rate is at 2.5%, and their overnight target rate is at 4.09%, and that's a drop last month as well. So pretty well good news around the overnight rates and inflation. So what does that mean for the cost of borrowing? If we look at what I was just saying, the mortgage rates have been pretty steady, but the variable rates are dropping with those overnight rate drops. The volatile bond market could result in further drops, and it could also impact those fixed rates, which is good as well. Economic slowdown is being driven by lower exports and business investment due to tariffs. Well, surprise, surprise, maybe those tariffs are having a negative effect on both economies. So we'll see how that plays out. But again, the Bank of Canada has lowered the rate on the 17th for the first time since January of this year, and that's good news. So overall, from the mortgage rate point of view, pretty good news. Here's that variable rate. We're expecting to see it fall a bit further. Also, with the fixed rates, we could see some more drops. Nothing dramatic, but still we could see another 25, 50 basis points, maybe even this year. So if we look at the power for today's cats out there with cash in hand buying, if we're looking at that 4.909% 5-year rate, we'd be borrowing and servicing that mortgage at $533 per 100,000 borrowed, $5,330 for $1 million mortgage, bringing it into the Vancouver environment for purchasing. So that's good to know when you're out there shopping around. And as I mentioned, inventory levels have been stable. If we look at the Westside, you can see we got a pretty straight line for houses. No dramatic increase in inventory. If we're looking at condos and townhomes, it's the same idea, pretty stable in terms of inventory. Eastside houses, same story, inventory is holding steady. And for attached condos, townhomes, Eastside, we saw a little bit of a jump last month, a little bit of a drop in sale prices last month in attached Eastside condos and townhomes. So there's a few changes happening there across BC. Active listings for 2025. Sorry, that's a small area, but you can see steady throughout the year. Not much change there. So what's happening with prices? One of the graphs I showed you last month, and I've just updated this, shows all the years from 2019 all the way up to 2025. This year in 2020, this past 2021 just shows an average normal year of activity in Greater Vancouver for number of sales overall. I track and plot this graph monthly, and you can see we usually get a very busy spring. A lot of sales take place, tapers off a little bit over summer, and we get our fall market here in September, October. That's a normal year. This year, if you can see it, it's kind of this pink line. It's, we had some increase in activity March, April, May, June, but certainly not a peak. And then it dropped off over the summer. Here's our last data point for September. But this didn't happen. Now, people didn't stop having babies and people didn't stop retiring. The demand is there, and this is my argument for the pent-up demand. There's a lot of pent-up demand out there for people who are wanting to buy and wanting to sell and haven't because of the uncertainty. So when that uncertainty ends, that pent-up demand will take hold, and we will see some dramatic increase in activity throughout the province, maybe the country. So in conclusion, we are watching mortgage rates, inventory, consumer demand. Those are the three main areas that I'm looking at closely. The Bank of Canada overnight rate is dropping, and that's allowing the mortgage rates to drop. So that's a green check mark. Inventory levels are remaining stable. That's good. That's a green check mark. However, consumer demand remains inconsistent, mainly because of the uncertainty. If we knew it was coming, maybe we don't want to know what is coming. Maybe what's coming is great news. Nobody can tell you for certain what 2026 is going to be like, but I must tell you, every new year there is a renewed hope and excitement for a rebirth in our market and on things to take off. And that could very well happen next year. But overall, new buyers are entering the market as the mortgage rates fall. That's a fact. Immense pent-up demand is waiting for the opportunity to release. It won't take a lot. It might just be a couple more drops before that demand takes off, as long as we're seeing some global stability. Inflation remains low and healthy. There's supposed to be a Y there. So overall, prices are going to remain stable for the rest of the year. We're not going to see a lot of changes coming this year. And 2025, as it ends in 2026, the new year, of course, will bring great excitement pending global political stability and certainty. I hope that makes sense. That's my market update for October 2025. You can watch this video on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, and you can listen on YouTube Music, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. I'm Marty Pospisil. I wanted to thank you very much for joining me today. Enjoy the rest of this great month. We're going to see the leaves turn yellow and orange. It's going to be beautiful colors throughout our city. Enjoy it. Enjoy the fresh air, and I'll see you in a month.